Want to know the secrets to a lasting relationship? Then check out today's episode of Coffee with Tea.
Well, welcome to another episode of Coffee with Tea. And as you can see, we're on location, and I brought my favorite guest back, Mr. Quintin Dukes. You will remember him from season 1. He talked about transparency. Today, we're going to talk about relationships. So again, Mr. Dukes, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we are really enjoying the sun. If you didn't know, we're out here breaking the sweat, but hey.
It's a tad bit hot. Just a little bit, you know.
So, we're out here having a good time, but we really wanted to talk about relationships. We had a really good time about relationships. So tell me, how's everything been going?
It's been pretty good. You know, I tell people just take it one day at a time. Just take it one day at a time. That's all you can do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So why is relationships so important that people really don't understand? What's the one thing that they really don't seem to get?
I think as I grow older, I'll just speak from a personal, perspective. The one thing that I think a lot of people fail to realize when it comes to relationships is that it doesn't have to be so difficult. I think we make things so difficult, and it doesn't have to be that difficult. Really, all you have to do is bring, like we talked about in the previous episode, bring all of yourself to the table and be in a place to be able to do that. And of course, find a partner that's going to be receptive to you bringing who you are to the table, but also improve your communication. That's the biggest thing. You know what I mean? That is the biggest thing. And that's when I work with clients or even just with friends and they're venting to me about their experience dating or whatever, the biggest thing that I have seen is people not being okay with who they are and what they do. You know what I mean? And that's the biggest thing. One thing that comes to mind is social media. People will, uphold conversations with other people, but you're trying to get to know somebody else. And you're interfacing with them every day. But in the meantime, you have these other isolated interactions with people. They really don't even know who you are. They're just getting a certain, I don't know, what do you want to say? A small little sliver of you. And that's it. That's all they see is what they see on either the computer. Maybe you may FaceTime every now and again, but is that really fair to the partner that you're entertaining and they're trying to get to know on a full-time basis? It's not. You know what I mean? So that's the thing that people fail to realize.
So, I mean, I know I've always found out. And, I've been married for 14 years. And I said, the biggest breakthrough in my marriage really was not really trying to change him. It was changing myself. So how much do you think that people really don't realize that the relationship really starts with them?
I think a lot of people, they fail to realize that. And the reason why I would say that is because I'll just speak from my perspective. The way that I was reared, so to speak, was go to school. You know what I mean? You are essentially your own puppeteer. You know what I mean? You're your own puppet, but you're the puppeteer as well. And we kind of buy into that. Where we go to school, we get the credentials. So being that we have the credentials, we think that we're gonna have this predisposed life, this predetermined life, and it also goes with partners as well. You're like, okay, well, I have the education. I'm making this amount of money. So next is the family. It's like you're checking things off you're checking the task off your list. And so when it gets there, this is why it's so difficult, because a lot of times, and I'll just go ahead and I'll just say that a lot of us have the Captain Save-A-Hole syndrome. That's what I call it, the Captain Save-A-Hole syndrome. You will have all of these requirements of what it is that you want to do. And this is a sidebar. At least this is what I utilize for myself. I tell my clients the same thing. Do not require something of someone that you can't bring to the table. Well, you will hear people who will say, oh, I want somebody who makes $75,000 a year. Well, honey, if you don't make $75,000 a year, don't expect that. Now, if it just so happens that way, then it just so happens that way. But you can't go out saying, like, this is what I want, and you don't bring that to the table.
Yeah, I learned that. We learned that. That was from the military. We always learned, never expect anything from somebody else that you wouldn't do for yourself.
And you want to know what the craziest thing is? I know people in my generation, they don't get that. They don't understand that, and you know that, and I do understand some of the philosophy of the baby boomers when they say, "Oh, well, you young people are impatient. You want something overnight. You want the microwave effect." Yeah, you're right. We do.
Well, you can't blame them because everything is instant. I mean, and we live in a world of instant gratification.
Yeah, but sometimes you got to slow it on down.
Well, true.
You got to slow it on down, because when you're moving too fast, that's just like when you speeding. You know what I mean? You're not able to take in everything that's in your view.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you skip over certain things. Sometimes it's okay to slow down, check in with self, and be like, okay, self, what is it that we really doing? Where is it that we really trying to go?
Right.
And I think that's the biggest issue, especially I find people in my generation, the ones that don't have the maturity, at least as of yet, you know what I mean? They just moving, and they think that, okay, well, being that I've done these things, this is what is supposed to happen. And when you don't find that ideal person, a lot of us don't know how to function.
Right.
We don't. I'll just be honest. We don't know how to function, because we'll sit up there and we'll be like, well, I done did all these things. I done went to school. I got the education. I'm trying to build this happy family. I'm trying to do all of this. And for some odd reason, this is the one thing that doesn't work. For some odd reason, this is the one thing that does not work, is the relationship. And then when you finally get into a relationship, then it might be something with your job. You know what I mean? So that's why a lot of times people are like, y'all don't know, like older people, they're like, y'all don't know how to handle, a lot of adversity too,
Right.
you know?
I mean, I think they have it, but I don't really think it's age. I think, like I said, because I'm well seasoned over past Quintin, so I'll just put it that way. But I'm just saying, it took me 40 plus years to finally understand that relationships really begin, I say, within. And I think a lot of people who are afraid to take that journey within are missing a really deep relationship for themselves and with others, because and the more I interview people, everything is related to self, like how you treat yourself or how you recognize yourself, because what they always say in like attracts like. So if you don't even know what you want, how do you expect to attract somebody to serve you if you don't even know what you want for yourself?
Right. No, I completely agree with
So
that.
I think I don't think age really, I would probably never agree with that, what wisdom tells you to. I wouldn't agree with that years ago, because I'm like, psh, you can't tell me. But now I'm like, it's not age,
it's maturity.
It's
maturity. It's life experiences. And the reason why I would say that, just to add on to your point, there is something, and ever since I was, maybe 13, 14, maybe 15, I would see older people. They just tended to be older people. Right. Not older people all the time, but they just tended to be more or less older people. They just have a certain calm about themselves. You can tell that they've probably been through a lot, but it wasn't, it wasn't a loss to them.
Right.
They went through the situations, whether it happened once, twice, 3 times. Maybe they didn't learn on the first try. It is what it is.
Right.
But they learn from it.
Right.
And so they know, okay, I'm not going to go down that road again.
Right.
I know what not to do, and I know what to do, so I don't find myself in that situation again.
Right.
So that's why I love to surround myself with older people, and I still do that now.
Right.
Because it's the amount of wisdom, because I notice that there are times when I'm stressed out about something, and I'll go to them and I'll be like, huffing and puffing, I can't take it, I don't know what to do, and all this other stuff. And then they're sitting there, they're like, baby, you stressed out about that? Oh, when you get to my age, that's not even going to stress you out.
Right,
that's not even going to stress you out at all. So it's something to aspire to, but along the way you have to do it in a constructive way. You have to definitely learn from it.
Yeah.
Definitely learn from it.
Yeah, I do. Adding on to that, definitely learn that, because like I said, I've gone, for those who, I always say this in every step, for those who don't know. it must be my trademark signature.
I was going to say it's your tagline. It's your tagline.
For those who don't know, you're going to know now. I've been divorced, twice. This is my 3rd marriage. So it took me, and I really figure it took me, or my husband would say, what's the common denominator in these failed marriages? It was always me. And I'm not saying that, we both didn't bring something to the table. We both brought something, but I learned forgiveness, for one, as they always say.
That's
forgive
important.
myself.
That's important.
Because I didn't know what I wanted. And then 2, forgive them, because I couldn't give them what I wanted for myself, because I didn't know what I wanted for myself.
Right.
So after I learned that valuable lesson, of course, it took time.
Right.
there's two people who can make a marriage or break a marriage. It's not just one person.
Right. Right.
I do know that.
Right.
So.
No, and I agree. Listen, I full disclosure, haven't been married yet, but from the marriages that I've seen, both, you know, successful ones and ones that are not so successful, I think that is true. I think that is true, and you actually brought up something great and relevant that anybody can use, no matter if you're dating, whether you're in a long-term relationship or you are married. You have to be a visionary. You have to envision what it is that you want for your relationship.
Oh yeah.
And I tell people that all the time. It's like if the two of you haven't gotten together and created a roadmap, and it's not like, okay, well, I'm just gonna leave that responsibility on one person.
Right.
No, it's the both of you. You have to come together and be like, okay, let's see if our visions meet in the middle. Can we compromise? Can we do this or what have you? So it's about working together. It's about being a team.
I would add on to that. You know, the thing is though, me and my husband, like I said, he's a good man, but we don't have a roadmap together. We really don't. And I say it nicely because it's like he does his thing, I do my thing, and then like I said, to add on and really to say, yeah, it does help to have a roadmap if you're going together, but you can make it if you don't, because your identity should not be so fixed on who they are or what they do that you forget who you are.
Oh yeah, of course.
You know, and I think. And I would say I did get hung up on like, oh my God, we're not working together. But the marriage was working. So it's like, why are you sitting here stressing out about what's not working and celebrate what is working?
Exactly.
And I think that's a key point that people don't. You get so caught up in what the magazines say you should be doing, or what other people are doing in their No, what's working for you is working for you.
Right. Right.
You know, and it doesn't have to be. You know, I know people who do, you know, unconventional marriages, whatever the way they want to do it. That's fine, you know, because it works for them. And I think the most valuable lesson I learned too is stop comparing yourself to others.
Oh, can you say that one more?
Stop comparing
Can you
yourself
say that one more
to
time?
others, please. It's not worth it.
It's not worth it. It's not.
And you can do that with your job, with your social media. You can do that with your relationships, with your kids. Just stop comparing yourself to others because you're not them. And I think if they can get that, you just get that. That's a good start.
Right. So let me ask you a question. Let me flip it a little bit. I'm not the interviewer, but let's flip it a little bit. How's your communication? And what aspects of communication have worked, or what practices have worked?
Okay. In the beginning,
in the beginning,
I was really, and I can't really speak for him because I know we still have arguments, but not to the extent where we used to. We had some doozies back in the days, and I think really came down to us trying to the power struggle. It was a power struggle in this relationship, you know, because as you can see, I'm not very quiet. So he can be quiet, but he can be very vocal. He's from Texas, so I call him Big Texas. So if anybody know, my husband's big nickname is Big Texas. So
he probably is really big, straightforward. But okay,
he can be straightforward. But I'm come from New York, so I can be straightforward. So we can clash.
We have a way about ourselves.
Yes, we have a clash. So in the beginning, that's what I say. In the beginning, it was like you're gonna hear me. You're gonna hear me. And that's where sometimes the bigger arguments came, instead of just slowing down, stepping away. And as you say, is this really worth the fight?
Right.
Is it worth me being right? You know, and then once I realized that, and it didn't come right away. Because like I said, I've been divorced twice. So
you had to learn.
I had to learn.
It's
so,
okay.
Yeah, in this marriage, it took me like a couple of years. And like I said, again, I stopped trying to change him and really focused on changing myself.
Oh, can you say that one more time?
I stopped trying to change him, and I changed myself. I did.
That goes to that Captain Save-A-Ho syndrome. You can't change the person. The person has to want to change for themselves.
Exactly.
There we go.
Yes, yes. So when I started to change, it really wasn't like I changed because I didn't think I was a really bad person. But what it was, as I started learning, I started reading. I did read marriage books. I did read, you know, and like you said, we focus on learning about our jobs. What can we do to make our jobs better? We learn about how to be better relationships, but for some reason we don't put the same investment into learning how to build our relationships. And there's books out there. People will give you advice all day, you know, and if you take that same I would say, urge of learning
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to the relationships and your marriages and your cooking and your
Mm-hmm.
diets and all that stuff. You can always improve on something. So communication, getting back to that because I haven't forgot about that. I can speak for myself only.
Mm-hmm.
If it's something that's on my heart that really has to be said, I usually take a moment and I don't go right away at when it's charged, when it's like emotionally charged with it.
Okay.
I usually have to take a moment to step back, and I look for a moment when we're both calm.
Okay. Okay.
And we can approach, and maybe we can approach it where I'm not trying to either play a victim, play the control card. I'm just bringing it up, and I do bring it up like honey, and I don't say honey but I'll be like, dear, I really need to talk to you about this. It's really on my heart or on my mind, and I really wanted to share it with you. And you're not, and like I said, you're not emotionally charged about it. You're not coming at it like, because if you're coming, and I learned somebody shared physics, and I'm not a big physics person, but one force coming that way is going to cause another force to come away. So if I'm coming at you like, you're going to tell me this way, of course you're going to get defensive and you're going to come back at me. So it really defeated the whole purpose of how I'm coming at him, because if I want to get a result, I can't come charging.
Right.
You know, I got to come at a different angle and figure out how is it worth the battle?
Right.
Is it really worth that something that, or it could have been like a moody thing. No, I just need to have that moment. Now, mind you, we still have our moments, and I'll be like, honey, back off.
Right.
Right now I'm trying, and he'd be like, you don't need to do all that praying or that meditate. Yes, I do, because if I don't, I'm going to say something I'm going to regret.
Right.
So I think the biggest thing about communication is let them know, yeah, that they are heard. I hear what you're saying. You're not going to always agree.
Right.
It's okay to disagree on it. And then, like you said, sometimes I've learned that if I do voice my opinion, it takes them a little while to process it. And change might come a little bit later. So it does, again, that instant gratification doesn't always have to come through now.
But that's that emotional intelligence. I want to touch on that. That's that emotional intelligence that a lot of people, I know working in healthcare, that was like a new buzzword, I would say 2015, 2016, and it was always used in a business context. But it is useful for your relationships.
And what is that again?
Being able to understand the other person emotionally. But that's because you've checked in with yourself and you know yourself emotionally, but you're able to step up. There's an undercurrent of empathy that you've cultivated. So you're able to take yourself out of your own position. So say if you two are getting into it, then you're able to say, okay, well, let me try to see it from their point of view. Let me try to understand what it is. You may not agree. It's okay to agree, disagree, be indifferent, but at least that ability to be able to say, you know what, let me stop being so consumed with self and be able to figure out what the other person is feeling. That's emotional intelligence.
Well, see, I learned something new today.
I mean, that's all it is in a nutshell. That's all it is.
Like I said, I think, like I said, to me, and I read a lot. I'm definitely read. Find any book that, you know, if there's a subject you want to learn, there's a book out there.
Right, of course.
And if not, find a podcast, listen to an ebook, something. There's something out there for whatever you're looking for. And I think the biggest thing for me was learning thyself, you know, because they always say know thyself. Because once I learn me, I can recognize it in others. Because jealousy in me looks like jealousy in you. It may come off as a different trigger, but we're feeling the same thing.
Feeling the same thing.
And like I said, when I get upset at my husband and I'm coming at him, I know from a perspective of where we're at in our relationship that he doesn't mean to be, you know, hard-headed. Or, you know, I know he doesn't mean to be cold or non-calculated. I know that. So obviously he's not understanding where I'm saying, or maybe I'm not communicating it enough. And so sometimes those are the two things I had to step back and be like, you know what? Maybe he hasn't processed it. He hasn't experienced the way I have it. So, you know, you just step back, like I said.
Just step back.
Slow it down.
So here's one thing that I want to talk about.
What's that?
The art of apologizing. Ooh. The art of apologizing. I think that there's a way to do it. Not saying that there's a strict handbook and you have to implement it this way each and every single time. Of course, I'm not saying that. But the one thing when I was sitting there listening to you is that there has to be some forgiveness, as like you talked about it, and be able to acknowledge that forgiveness. And the message that right before I got here, there was like a message that was like going through my head of being able to say, communicate about apologizing.
Ooh.
Just because there are so many people out there that don't know how to properly apologize. Like, you get into a tiff with somebody. Have you ever come across those individuals that'll just be like, I'm sorry?
Oh, yeah.
And you know it's disingenuous. You know that for a fact. You're sitting there, you're just like, you're on the receiving end of it, like I talked about before, about the intent behind your statement and the impact. So when it lands and it impacts that person is sitting there like, you ain't really mean that.
But you know what? Here's what I'm saying a lot. And you talk about the art, and I think it is art.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's like, if you know yourself, you know when it's genuine. I read in the book, and it's one of those things I always keep in the back of my mind. It says, nature does not judge, but man does. So when I sit here and I think about that stuff, it's like, okay, is this a judgmental thought? Is this something that I'm holding on? Or is it something that, maybe that's the best you're going to get from that person? Because they're not on that level of forgiving themselves.
Right.
So once I learned that, I was like, why am I sitting here? I got something out of it. And I'm not going to talk about my husband. I love him dearly. But what he does sometimes is he'll send me a Bitmoji for an apology. And I used to get upset. Like, he's going to send me in the text.
Right.
But that's where he's at. And I cannot sit here and, like, knock the way he does it for him.
Right.
So the whole point was they can do it how they do it, but you need to check yourself on how you respond.
That's a good point.
That's the key point.
That's
so
a good point.
It's like, what point he apologized. It may not have been the way you wanted it, but he apologized. And you have to, and I don't think it's about settling, because at some point, everybody's on their journey. You have to understand everybody's on their journey, and not everybody's going to understand and do it the way you want it done.
And see, it's not even about the thing. This is what I was saying about the art of apologizing. Because here's the thing.
What's that?
And I understand people are in certain places.
I'm getting comfortable, right?
Right. We're going to be out. Listen,
like this.
We're going to be out here for a while. So the thing of it is,
we can talk about relationships.
Right. So the thing of it is this. I get it. You got to be able to meet the person where they are.
Right.
I learned that in public health. You got to meet the people where they at.
Right.
What I was saying is that sometimes it's helpful when you apologize. You say, you know what, like say I stepped on your foot and I really didn't mean to.
Right.
And then I'll say, you know what, Tonia, I apologize for stepping on your foot. In that way, you've apologized. I'm coming from a sincere place, because hopefully you're checking my body language. Now, if I'm saying here like this and I'm like, you know what, I'm sorry. That's going to give off a totally different whatever.
Right.
Now that's going to show you where I'm at.
Right.
You're going to be able to be like, okay, well, and it'll probably facilitate other communication to be able to say, well, maybe you're not in a place to apologize. Maybe you need to go sit back and go see about yourself and come to me when you're ready to apologize, if that's what you choose to do. But I think it's important to have like a specific art about apologizing, because when you just say, oh, I'm sorry, that's it. You're really not acknowledging the poor behavior that came with it. Or I don't even want to say poor behavior, the behavior that kind of exacerbated the situation.
You're right. But see, here's the thing, and this is where I come down to the relationship. You can't control what they do or how they do or what they say or anything like that, but you have control on how you receive it. And if you know that they weren't sincere, are you going to hold on to it? Is it going to hurt you? Is it going to affect you in 5 years from now? No, probably not. So those
are the questions you have to ask, because depending upon what they're apologizing for, you may want to be like, okay, I'm gonna get my keys and my purse.
That goes towards any relationship. It could be your spouse, because they could be showing you really who they are.
Exactly, and that was eventually what I was gonna get to. They might be showing you who they are.
So yeah, it depends. Yeah. You can apply that across the board to anything, because it really comes down to how you treat yourself. If you allow that, continue to allow that to continue to happen, then you have to step back and say, why am I letting this continue to happen?
Right.
They're showing you
who
that they don't
are.
really care.
Right.
And now if you come across a coworker and they're like, I'm sorry, I just have to date. then you can step back and then in the process it, well, you know, if you know the concept, because it's all about self
you're exploring yourself.
you're exploring yourself or
Having
whatever.
that emotional inventory
Right,
of
yes.
yourself. Yeah.
I realize sometimes we act the age of teenagers, right? And we have our temper. I have temper tantrums.
You
when
want to
I-
know what? That is an important thing. Well, because it was so crazy because when I was going into healthcare business, I remember I attended a training. And at that time, I was fairly young. I think I had to be like maybe 23, 24. And that was the one thing that the lady said. The lady said that as adults, it's so funny because our emotional portion of our brain never really matures.
No.
The most it gets to is the age of a 5-year-old. So when you start to see that immature behavior, you be sitting there, you be like, you are a little kid. Bless your heart.
My conversation with Quintin was just getting started, but to be respectful of your time, we ended it here. So stay tuned for part 2, but we have a question. What's the one thing that's helped your relationships last? Please post your answers in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.
Make sure you email us for guests and show ideas. Links are posted in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe. And remember, take things in stride, go with the flow, and create your own path. Again, Quintin, we're going to continue this conversation, but we're going to pause it right here.
All right, sounds good.